Now that we've got our image all imported and scaled properly, we're going to get started drawing our walls. But the first thing we're going to do is save our plan. So we want to make sure we get that saved, and I'm going to call it sample plan. I already had one, so that I was using earlier, so I'm just going to use that one again. And but you can see I've got it here in my course with all of my other course stuff. So make sure you've got it in your proper folder, and then hit save. Yes, I don't. I've already got one, so that's okay. But make sure you get that saved. And now we are ready to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a couple of default settings. We're going to work with our defaults throughout the project, but there's a couple of things that we need to get started with first. So now we're going to start drawing in our walls. I'm going to go ahead and grab this straight exterior wall, and I'm just going to draw in one wall to start with. And I'm going to grab a three-dimensional view by going to my camera tool and using the perspective floor overview. That will give me a look at so I can see the interior. It will cut off the ceiling and the roof so that I can see down inside. So I'm going to click that, and here's the wall that I just drew in 3D. So I like to work where I can see 2D and 3D at the same time. So what you can do is click on the tab for this window and just start dragging it around to the configuration that you want. I like them side by side, so let go of it there, and now I can see both happening simultaneously. So I'm going to work over here in my 2D view, but as I'm making changes, I'll be able to see them happening in 3D the whole time. So I'm going to get this wall, my exterior walls, set up for my default so that all of my walls on the outside all look the same. So I'm going to go into this window, and I'm going to go to this tool, and I'm going to grab the wall and open up its dialog box. That's this tool here. This opens up its dialog so you can set all of your parameters. I'm going to wall type. It's a 6-inch siding wall, so that means it's got a 6-inch stud with siding, which is fine, but I'm going to customize it to what I want because I do not want this blue siding. I want it to have some board and batten, and I want this white board and batten. So I'm going to choose that, and that's going to change my exterior wall here to that material instead. So now everything I draw with this wall is going to have that material. I'm going to change my interior as well from this just default generic drywall color. I'm going to click that because I want all of my walls inside to be Alabaster by Sherwin-Williams. So, and there it is. And the reason that I have this is because I downloaded the Sherwin-Williams catalog from Chief Architect. So get that downloaded and added into your program, and you will have all the Sherwin-Williams colors. So click OK. And now all of my exteriors are this and my interiors are this. I'm not worried about the rest of this stuff. We're just going to keep that as defaults. The reason this can become important is you don't have to go back and change every wall when you know you want it all to be the same. And then if you are taking this model out to render, then you know that these are not going to be conflicting textures. If you build all your walls and then use the paint tool to change it, sometimes it still thinks that this texture is in there, and it will layer them, and it will cause you conflicting texture problems when you go to render. So make sure you change it in here first so that you have that built into the wall. So we're going to click OK. And now our wall looks like this with the white board and batten and the alabaster on the inside. Okay. So, and now it changed here too, so you can see that. So now that I've got that updated, I've built that wall how I want it to be, I'm going to make that my default wall. So that every wall on the outside that I build, every time I choose this tool, I want it to be this wall. So I'm going to highlight that wall, and I'm going to set it as my default. That will make all of those walls my default every time I use it. So yes, I want to do that. Okay. If you are in Home Designer Pro, you will have some different options for setting up your wall defaults. So if I select the wall here that I've put in, I do not get the little symbol down here to make it into my default wall type. So I'm not going to have that option here. So what you're going to want to do to update your wall defaults is you're going to need to go into your default settings here and go into your walls and then to exterior wall and edit that. And then you're going to want to edit that in here. So we will go to wall types and siding and define that and find that board and batten, the white board and batten there. Okay, so we've changed that. Okay, and okay. And I'm going to click done. So that's going to change our wall type, our default walls in Home Designer Pro. So you're going to want to do that for your interior walls as well when you get to that point. That will also apply to anything else throughout these lessons that we're going to make defaults. You're going to have to go into your default settings for each thing as we go through. Now I can use this tool again and I can go around and trace all of my exterior walls. And I am not at all worried about my dimensioning right now. I'm just tracing the general shape of the outside of the building. And there we go. And that all connected. If I go over here, you can see that once I connected all of the exterior walls, it created a room inside. It generated the floor and the baseboards and everything that I've got set as my parameters, which we'll get into. But it also generated the ceiling for me, but you can't see that because we've got this view with it cut off. But once you get everything connected, it creates the room. So what we are going to do now is check our dimensions now that we have all of that traced out. So you will see that the program generated these automatic dimensions on the exterior for us. So I am going to zoom way in. Actually, let's look at Let's turn off this image for just a minute. See, this is the reason we like to put it on its own layer. So I can just turn it off real quick so we can see how it made these dimensions for us. It automatically gave all those to us, which is so super handy. I absolutely love that tool. So what we want to do, we want to see how they made these dimensions. They gave us the arrows instead of the slashes. There's the text style and color, and you can see here where that dimension is dimensioning to. So if I highlight it, it shows me where that little point is. So it's dimensioning to the outside of my framing layer. So these would be my stud layer, and then this is my siding layer. So that's where that's dimensioning it to. So let's look at what our drawing is that we imported. Let me turn that back on. And I probably need to let me just move it out of the way for a second so we can see it, and then we'll move it back. All right, so if I'm looking, I can't click on it because it's an image, but you can see these are dimensioned to the outside of the finish layer. That's what that's dimensioned to. So if I want to make this match, I need to change that so that all of these match to that outside layer. So, and then you can see for my interiors, on my interior walls, it's it's set to the center line of the wall. Now, this is going to be different depending on your project and your builder or your architect, or how your own graphic standards are, how you're setting up your files. So that is something you just need to pay attention to if you're tracing another file, and when you're making your own files from scratch. You need to decide how you're dimensioning things, because you can also dimension your interior. So if you've gone to site plan, if you've gone to a site visit and taken field measurements, then you're probably going to have measurements from inside of sheetrock to inside of sheetrock. So that's what this is showing here. So this is your 1/2 inch sheetrock here. So this is dimensioned sheetrock to sheetrock. So these are your interior dimensions here. So you just have to decide how that is working in your project, and it could differ from project to project. I'm going to go here to my default settings, and I'm going to go into my dimensions, and see, these are the auto exterior dimensions. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to keep most of this the same, but I'm going to go here and change where it's picking things up. So right here, it's going to that wall dimension layer. So that's where it's grabbing onto that that stud layer. But I'm going to change it to go to the surfaces so that it matches the drawing, so that my dimensions will match. And then on the interior walls, I'm going to change it to the wall centers, to the centers of the studs there. And then let's see, for these dimensions, I'm not going to show, I don't want to show any of my openings, so I'm just going to turn that one off. So it's not going to pick up any windows and doors as I add those quite yet. So, and you can go back and change your defaults as you work through the project. That's typically what I do, depending on what's going on. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to be done. And that has now changed those automatic dimensions. They're now picking up to the corner. If I were to highlight, let's see, if I were to grab that dimension, now it is going to the corner of my surface layer instead of to my stud layer. So I just want to make that match. And again, that's going to depend on your project, but for this project, that's what we're going to do. Okay, if you are in Home Designer Pro, you are not going to have the same dimension options and saved sets like we do over in Premiere or Interiors. So when you get to the point where you're ready to set up your dimensions, you need to, so these are the automatic dimensions that you're going to get, and you can see where it's snapping here to the stud layer, but we want it to go to our surface layer. So what you're going to do is you're going to still go into your default settings and go to dimensions, and edit. Oh wait, hang on, cancel that. You're going to go to the auto exterior dimensions and edit, and locate objects, and we're going to go to the surfaces for the exterior and the interior wall centers. So that's how we're going to set those up here. You have less options here, but you can still set it up as we are doing it in the project. So, and then we're done, and you see that changed that, and now it's going to our surfaces. And then if we drop in an interior wall, it will update that and snap to the center there. So that is how you update your dimensions in Home Designer Pro. So I'm going to move this back over now to here and kind of get that lined up. And if you hold your Control or your Command key while you move things, it overrides the snaps, so you can move stuff wherever you want to. And then you can use your arrow up and down key to nudge to get it exactly lined up. So I'm going to start in this corner and work my way around to get these dimensions to match. And I'm going to start with, so I'm not going to move this wall. I'm going to start with this wall, assuming this wall is in the right place, but I'm going to move this wall. So you can see the dimension on my image is 14'6", and I want that to be 14'5". So I'm going to change that to 14'6". There we go. Now this overall dimension from this wall to this wall is 36 feet 9. So I'm going to change that. And you see when you highlight, when you select a wall, any of the dimensions associated with that wall are going to light up. So, and then anytime you can hover over that dimension and select it, and now 36 foot 9. And now that is in the exact right position. So now those 3 walls are correct. So now I'm going to move this wall. So that should be 14 foot 6 and an 1/8. 6 and 1/8. That's in the right place now. That did not go to the right place. Let's try that again. 14 foot 6 and 1/8. There we go. Now it's in the right spot. Okay, and then this wall to this wall should be 6 foot 3 and 7/8. So actually I could grab that and I could use my arrow key and I can nudge that over 1 inch. Each click is a 1 inch nudge. So that was easy for that one. Let's see, what is this one? Should be 6 foot 6. So I'm going to highlight that wall and grab that 6 foot 6. And then I know I wasn't moving this wall, so I know this dimension should be that 5 foot. 5 foot. There we go. All right, so now all of those walls going that direction are in the correct spot. So now I'm going to do the walls going in this direction. So I'm going to save this one. I'm going to keep this one where it is, and I'm going to move this one. And that should be 8 foot 3. 8 foot 3. Okay, that one's correct. And I've got an overall dimension here from this wall to this wall of 27 feet 11. So when I grab that wall, it gives me this one. So I'm going to make that 27 feet 11. All right, now that's in the right spot. And this wall should line up to that one. So if I grab this red and I pull it down, I should be able to snap it to that wall. And now that's going to match. That's going to line up with that wall. All right, and then let me click out here. So I fixed that wall. I know that one's correct. So let's do this wall, which should be 30 feet 7 inches. 30 feet 7. All right, and then let's see. I've got an overall dimension from this wall all the way to the front of the porch here. So if I do that, that highlights. So that will give me 40 foot 6. Is that correct? Yes. So now that matches. Okay. And then this dimension should be 2 feet, and it's almost 2 feet. So we're going to just make that 24 inches. So you can input feet, inches, or just inches. It will read inches if you just put that without using the inch symbol after. So you can input either way. All right, so those match up. 46, 46, 2711, 2711, 2. So those all match up. And then we have that overall dimension there. And then we have this dimension here. So that all matches up on that side. All right, so that is all of our overall dimensions all plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and pull this wall over now to create where that door is going to go. And let's see, I've got an interior wall here to create that. So I'll do that here. Actually, I'm just going to pull that one over. That's how I did that one. To create that fireplace, and we'll work on that another time. So, so you can see here, everything I've built now is all in 3D, and all of my walls have the board and batten on them, and I've got all of my dimensions correct. Okay, now that we've got all of our exterior walls drawn and it has generated our floor for us, I want to go in and get this floor all set up with our defaults throughout, so that everything we do throughout this floor is going to be the same. Now you can go in the very beginning of the project and do these. I kind of like to do them as I come to them because it's just a little bit more intuitive for me personally. But you can get all of this set up in the beginning, especially if you have like a list of parameters that you have from your site visit or from an architect, or your own project that you're setting up. However you want to do it. I like to do it as I go. But one way to do it, the way to do it is to go in here to your default settings. So we're going to get this set up with all of our floor and ceiling and heights and all of that. So we're going to go to floors and rooms, and we're going to go to floor levels, and we're going to go to the first floor. And we're going to edit that. So you can see in here, this is going to be our parameters for the entire first floor. You can set up your foundation, your floor level, your ceiling height, your ceiling structure, all of this information that you have for your project. Some of it may not pertain to what you're working on. Some may. We're going to mostly stick with defaults because we're just getting started, but I am going to change my ceiling height. So my ceiling is, I want my ceilings to be 9 feet throughout. So I'm going to make that 9 feet in my rough ceiling. Oh, I can always hit enter. And if you hit tab, it will go to the next thing. If you hit enter, it's like hitting OK. So I always do that. So my rough ceiling is going to be 9 feet, and so that makes my finished ceiling that. If you have taken site measurements and you're working on a remodel, something like that, you can put in exactly what you measured here. And then you can also go back as you build your rooms and do this per room. So if different rooms have different ceiling heights, you're not going to be locked into this forever. This is just setting your general parameters for your project to make things easier for you. So the other thing that I'm going to change here is I want this is not going to have a basement, this house. So I'm just going to make it a slab foundation throughout so that it shows that. So if you don't have this option, don't worry about it. It's not necessarily going to affect everything else that we're doing here. So I've got my ceiling height worked out. You can also, in here, in your default settings, you can change your moldings. So if you wanted a different base molding throughout or no base molding at all throughout, you can change that here. We're just going to stick with the defaults. This is how the floor looks. If you wanted to add a hatch pattern or something for your two-dimensional drawings, that's how that would look. Your materials, so the ceiling finish and the floor finish here and the base moldings all have their, these are the default finishes. I'm going to go in and actually change, I don't like this flooring. So I'm going to go in and change this so that throughout the rest of my house, I have a different flooring. So I know the flooring that I like is called Sugar Maple. So we're just going to search that, and it's this one. This is the one I like. So I'm going to use that one. And now all of my flooring throughout is going to be that. So let's see, we've done our ceiling height, and we've got all these, we're just keeping everything else as the defaults. So click OK to that. And now I'm done with that. And you can see it changed all of my flooring throughout the whole floor, first floor to that. So, and actually I want my flooring to run this direction. So I'm going to go into this window, and I'm going to use this little ribbon rainbow tool here and grab that. And I can pick that up that way, and I'm going to change that texture to run 90 degrees. There we go, because I want that to run like that. Okay, so that set up our overall room parameters in our defaults for the house. So I'm happy with that. Let me escape out of that tool, escape. Okay, so now anything that I draw inside, and now any of my interior walls that I draw are going to correspond to those room settings for the entire first floor. So it saves me having to fix any flooring or molding or anything else that's going in. That's going to be the general look for the overall house. Now, in some rooms, I'm going to add a crown molding in the living room and other things. So we'll do that individually. But now we've got it set up for our whole house. So now we can add our interior walls. We're going to do it the same way we did the exteriors. We're just going to get one drawn in, draw that in. And I'm going to go in and open up its dialog box. And I'm going to go to wall type, and it's a 4-inch interior wall, which is fine. So I'm just going to go in and define that though. And I'm going to change my materials. I'm going to change that to the alabaster as well. Alabaster. On that side. It's very similar to the drywall color, but I want it specified. And it also looks better when it's rendered. So I'm going to change that. Alabaster. Okay, and I'm going to keep everything else as defaults, and that's fine. And so click OK. And okay, and now that is fixed in that wall type, and I'm going to have that selected, and I'm going to make that my default. So now every wall that I do, that's make sure to set as my default, every interior wall. So every time I choose this tool, it's going to make that kind of wall that I just did. So I'm going to just start drawing in all of my interior walls now. Just tracing over very quickly to get all of my interior walls drawn in. And one here. All right, that's all my interior walls. Okay. Now that we've got all of our interior walls roughed in, we can go back and fix their exact positions according to our drawing. So as we were working, you can see that you may have noticed that as you're drawing in these walls, these exterior dimensions were updating and adding in the dimensions for these walls that touch the exterior. So that is super handy, and you can see where it's added in these dimensions here. So we're going to use those to place these walls that touch the exterior, and then we're going to place some interior dimensions for these walls in here. So what we're going to do, let's zoom in here. And actually first, I'm going to close this down because we're not really doing anything major to look at in 3D right now. And so I'm just going to close this down so that we can see this a little bit better. And I wonder if I can make that a little bit skinnier. There we go. Okay, so this wall here and this wall here connect exactly to these exterior walls. So when I drew those in, I grabbed that and snapped that onto that. So that is lined up. So and this one too. So these two walls are not going to move. Those are set where they are because they're connected, coming straight off of those walls. And this wall here that runs the length of the house here, I want centered on this wall. So I'm going to use the center tool, which is the center object tool. So you highlight the object that you want, you use the center tool, and I'm going to center it on that wall. And that's going to give me that perfect placement of where I want that wall to go there. All right, so the rest of these walls that touch the outside, we're going to use these dimensions here that came up. So we already know that the exterior walls are correct. So all we have to do is grab that wall, and then this dimension here should be 12'8". So we'll make that 12'8". And that made that one 15'3". So now that one's in the right spot. So let's look at this one. This one is on center at 6'11" there, but it should be 7'2". So we're going to change that to 7'2". And we are going to change this one to 3'9". Then this one should be 7'5". And that's all of our exterior walls. That made that all correct. That's all our walls that touch the exterior. So that fixed all of those. So that is one way to do your interior walls. We need to fix these walls now too, and they don't have dimensions that string to the outside. So we're going to add those. And we are going to do that by using this interior automatic dimension tool. And actually here, sorry, this one does the exterior. This is the automatic interior dimensions tool. So we're going to use that. But first we need to set up our defaults. So we need to go into our default settings and we need to check what all of those are doing. So we need to go to our dimensions and our auto interior dimensions. We're going to edit that. And we're going to go to locate objects. So on the interior of these walls, I want them to dimension to the surfaces. So this would be from sheetrock to sheetrock. And I'm doing this as if I had done site measurements and I had measured inside the room, which would be sheetrock to sheetrock. So again, this is going to depend on your specific project and how you need to dimension for your plans. If you're doing decorating, you need to go to surfaces, and sometimes for construction, you need to go to the framing layer. So, and then I'm just going to leave these defaults as they are for now. We'll come back to those another time. And so I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to do one other thing here in my dimensions. I'm going to go in and edit my general dimensions. And I'm using this 1/4 inch scale. So I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to go into my text style, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. It's at 6 inches and I like it at 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. And I'm going to also change my arrow style. It's got this arrow here. I'm going to change that to this slash mark. And I'm fine with 5 inches. So I'm just going to leave that as is. And then I'm going to click OK and click OK. And we're done. All right, so now when I hit this, it's going to fill all of these rooms with my interior dimensions as I set them in my defaults. So there they all are. So that is a super quick tool to get your interior dimensions. You can also go here, and if you use this interior dimension tool, you can draw your own interior dimensions. And because we set those defaults, that's matching up there. So I'm just going to delete that one. So sometimes when you use the automatic tool, it adds some extra dimensions around. So you do have to go through and do some cleanup sometimes with some of these. And some of these rooms I'm not going to be using interior dimensions because we used this framing dimensions here. So those don't show on the other plan, but I can leave those there to just show. But on these interior walls here, we are going to use them. But I'm going to just go in and clean some of this up because it does get kind of messy. So I know this wall isn't moving because it's connected here and I want that to line up. So I'm going to move this wall and let's see. I'm just going to move this to get rid of that dimension. So it should be 6'11" there. So 6'11", and that should be 8 feet. And this entryway, see, sometimes the dimensions get a little bit messy, so you just have to do a little bit of cleanup. And that's giving us an extra dimension there. So this should be 7'5". 7'5". And then I can just move that over there. And this gave us one in each room, so I'm just going to get rid of some of these extra dimensions. So that's correct. And just clean this up a little. Oop, if I double clicked it so it opened. Here's another interior wall that we need to fix. So that should be 9'9" and 1/8. 9'9" and 1/8. That's because that hallway is 4 feet, so that matches up. So that's good. All right, here in our bathroom, those are outside walls, so we just need to fix this one. So let's see, what is this supposed to be? 8'8" and 1/8, and from here to here is 5'1", so that's easier. So let's do that one. 5'1". All right, so that is all of our interior walls completely input and dimensioned properly.